'Tis the season, everyone. I've always enjoyed the lights, the festivities, and the food this time of year. And although in my family it's a requirement to make tamales, I wanted to make a turkey also. And I thought, what better way to make a turkey than smoke it up on my kettle grill. So I have here a 12-pound bird that gave its life for our sustenance, although I suspect it didn't do so voluntarily. I've chosen to spatchcock this turkey, which means I'm going to remove its spine with some sharp kitchen shears, and I'll flatten the turkey out and cook it that way. Using this method is going to decrease substantially the amount of time the turkey takes to cook. So I'm first just preparing the turkey by getting rid of some excess skin and removing the tail. And once that's done, I'm going to take my kitchen shears and turn the turkey around, and I'm going to cut down one side of the spine all the way down the length of the turkey. And I will admit that although this is an easy thing to do with a small 3 or 4 pound chicken, removing the spine from this turkey was quite the humbling experience. It put up quite a fight. But with a little determination, and with some manual bone breakage, I got the job done. And if I thought that was difficult, it ended up being a more difficult process to remove the breastbone. I suppose you could forego this step, but I find that removing the breastbone really helps the turkey lay out flat with no resistance. There really is no way to show much kindness to the bird as you do this. But again, with a good amount of effort, even though I got discouraged, I eventually got it removed. And if you're like myself and you really want to minimize waste, you can always use the breastbone and backbone to make a stock later on. My sincerest apologies that this is not at all a beautiful sight. I'm going to salt the turkey liberally on both sides to serve as a dry brine in the refrigerator overnight. If you watched my previous video in which I smoked a pork shoulder, I explained how salt draws the moisture out of the meat, which in turn dissolves that salt, and the science that I don't understand works its magic by drawing that moisture back in the turkey, flavoring what can usually be an otherwise somewhat flavorless cut of meat. And if you haven't done this before, I highly recommend it. I think it'll really take your cooking game to the next level. And with the turkey salted to my satisfaction, I'm going to place it uncovered in the refrigerator and we'll see it the next morning. Now when I do a cook that's going to take several hours, I'll usually get my grill ready the day before, so I can set up my coals and my wood in such a way that they will burn very gradually for the long cook. This cook isn't going to require that level of care. Turkey is a lean cut of meat which doesn't have all the fat, connective tissue, and collagen that needs to break down over several hours on low heat. So before I even get my fire set up, I'm going to take my turkey out of the refrigerator and get it seasoned. And you can see that the skin looks very dried out and desiccated, but that's nothing to worry about. It's actually going to keep the skin from steaming during the cook and making it very soft. And when I turned the turkey over, I realized it had a waffle pattern from the grate I was resting it on. I think of Rodney Dangerfield because I really gave this bird just no respect during this process. For the seasoning, I'm going to take the easy route. I thought about making a rub, but I realized that this Kinder's or Kinder's seasoning already has a number of the flavors I was thinking of using anyway. Additionally, I've really come to a place where what I want to stand out most is the flavor of the smoke. And the seasoning is there just to complement the flavor of the smoke, to serve as a backup singer, to harmonize. So I want the turkey to be covered in the seasoning, not too lightly, not too heavily, but I do want to get a good color on it. I honestly didn't measure out any specific amount of seasoning, but I would estimate that I used probably about a 1/4 cup to 1/3 of a cup. But depending on the size of the bird and on your own personal preference, you may use a little more, you may use a little less. As the wise philosophers of the 21st century would say, you do you, boo. I mean, I wouldn't say it, but they would. Anyway, I realized just as I did when I smoked the pork shoulder that I forgot to add pepper. So I'm going to cover the turkey with what amounts to probably about 1.5 teaspoons worth. And now that I'm satisfied with the seasoning, I'm going to take it outside with me because it'll only be about 10 minutes before the fire's ready. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I don't need to use the snake method as I have with my previous cooks because I don't need to keep the temperature under 300 degrees for a long span of time. Because I can cook at a somewhat higher temperature, I'm just going to use the baskets that came with the kettle grill, and I'm going to fill them with charcoal and wood. And as that charcoal and wood burns through, I can come back later and add more charcoal and wood over the top. I decided to venture into what is for me uncharted territory by using only pecan wood and not apple wood, which is what I almost always use for chicken, turkey, and pork. But I'll use my fire starter chimney to get my charcoals lit, and I'll let them burn until I no longer see this white billowy smoke, but rather what looks like almost a clear heat wave. And at this point, I have to own up to the fact that that wood chunk I threw in there was an apple wood chunk, because old habits die hard. But at this point, you can see that even though the charcoals on top haven't ashed over, you don't really see any smoke coming atop anymore, which tells me that that fire is burning very clean, and I'm going to get my kettle loaded. As it turned out, I actually lit more charcoals than I intended. So I used my tongs to move them around, and you'll see a little bit later how I had to adjust for this initial error. But for now, this will suffice, so I get the grate back on, I cover it, and I let the chamber come up to temperature, making sure I open up the vents completely to allow plenty of oxygen. And as I do anytime I slow smoke meats, I put some boiling water in an aluminum pan. This will humidify the chamber and will help reduce any major spikes in temperature. We're at about 11 a.m. local time, and I'm getting the turkey in the kettle. And it's at this point I'm realizing that I should have really just left all the charcoals in one basket. I had to really adjust the turkey to keep it away from the fire. But I adjust the bottom vent to keep it about half open. I want the turkey to cook at about 325 Fahrenheit. And just 45 minutes in, I already have really good color on the bird. But I am having to make some adjustments to my coals. I want this turkey to cook completely indirect from the fire, and if I have any coals underneath parts of the bird, those parts will cook much faster than the rest. I've also lost a good amount of heat keeping the lid off this long, so I figured I would just make quite a few adjustments now and not have to worry about making those adjustments again later. Once that's done, I add a few more charcoals and 2 more chunks of wood. That'll help the temperature come back up and keep that fire burning well for the next 45 minutes to an hour. Just another 45 minutes after my first check-in, and we're starting to get really great color on this turkey. I'm pretty pleased with that, so I add just a few more coals, I make some adjustments there, and I add 2 more chunks of wood. And looking closely at the color on the turkey, I decided to rotate it at 180 degrees. The legs have spent most of the time closer to the fire, but kettle grills promote a convection effect in which heat comes up the middle and comes down the sides, which is why you actually see more browning on the wings than the legs. So I hope to even that out by having rotated the turkey. It's a tight squeeze, but good fire management will prevent any problems. But I think the next time I come out to check, it'll actually be done. And as it turns out, that guess is correct. As you can see, the fire that last hour burned nice and steady. I have great color on the turkey with nothing that looks burnt. Off camera, I did insert a temperature probe in the thickest part of the thigh, which registered about 203 degrees. And also in the thickest part of the breast, which registered about 190 degrees, which did concern me a bit, since turkey is such an easy meat to dry out. So the best thing I can do at this point is remove the turkey from the heat and let it rest for at least a half hour, if not longer. And after resting for an hour in a turned off oven, this is my final result. And all that's left to do now is carve it up and serve it. So I'm first just going to cut the turkey in half at the breast, after which I'll separate the leg and the thigh, and then the wing. There's really no trick to getting the parts of the turkey separated efficiently. With a little bit of experience, you just come to learn where the joints are. And when you cut down to the joint, you can just give it a pop. Removing the wing might be somewhat tricky, but separating the leg and the thigh is actually a bit easier. All you have to do is gently pull it away from the breast, and it'll show you where you need to cut. Now you can serve the leg whole, or you can choose to separate the thigh from the drumstick. That's as easy as giving it a little wiggle to find the joint, and then cutting down into that until you meet the bone. From there, it's just a quick tear of the meat, and then cut down into that joint confidently to separate them. When it comes to the turkey breast, you can serve it on the bone if you'd like, or you can separate it from the bone and slice it across the grain. We're really just talking about preferred presentation here. I opted to separate the turkey meat from the bone and clean it up a little bit. I think a benefit of choosing to debone and slice the breast is that anyone who wants a piece of the white meat can get a piece. The knife I have here is actually a deboning knife, not necessarily a carving knife, so it did take a bit more time and effort to get this done nicely. But if you take a look at the cross section here, you can see clearly that there's plenty of juice left inside the bird. If you have a large serving platter, you can present the whole bird this way. This is the biggest decent looking plate I have, so I'm only showing you half the bird, but you get the point. Someday in the future, I may learn how to prepare side dishes at the same time that I'm making a main course. I haven't really learned how to do that yet. My brain can only carry so much at one time without getting overwhelmed. But at least I can make a pretty killer main course. And I think that's a good thing, so I'm going to do what doesn't really come naturally for me and give myself credit for that. I do hope this gives you some ideas on what to serve for a Christmas or holiday dinner. But if you'll stick with me for just a bit longer, I have a couple of things I'd like to share. I make it a point to watch a lot of holiday-themed movies around this time, and in the 1992 Muppet Christmas Carol film, Kermit the Frog sings the lyric, "'Tis the season to be jolly and joyous. With a burst of pleasure we feel it arrive." And objectively, it is a joyous time of year. I've certainly found joy in the holidays for much of my life. But at other times in life and in the lives of many other people, the holidays can be a difficult time to get through. For those who are alone, for those who have lost loved ones or been estranged from people they love, for those with no financial stability, or for those who find themselves in a place in life that they never really anticipated or hoped for. And it can be very confusing to see so much joy around you at this time of year and not really feel like you're a part of it. I really hesitate to say that I felt led to make this particular video, but if what I just described feels very relatable to you, I want you to know that this video is for you. And my wish for you this holiday season is that you would find hope. If you'll indulge just one more film reference. In the 1994 film The Shawshank Redemption, the character Andy writes a letter to his friend Red, and in that letter he says, "Remember that hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies." And as I'm often reminded of that sentiment, I've come to realize that that's what the holidays symbolize for me. Hope. So it's my hope that you find hope and joy this holiday season. I hope you find comfort in those around you, whether you celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah or another tradition or no tradition at all. But I want you to know that no matter who you are welcome at my table, unconditionally. For one simple yet important reason, because you are loved. Peace, everyone.